Do you have the gift of gab and like talking about interesting topics? Are you often called opinionated by your friends and family? Then come to Anchor where you can be all of the above and get paid for it. Along with being one of the easiest systems to create contact with, Anchor supplies everything you need and can be used from your smartphone or computer. They even distribute your content for you so that you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Just download the Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Okay, hello bookworms. This is Anjanette Potter, also known as Adam's Rib, and this is my review for Linda Rosen's book, The Disharmony of Silence. This book review is for the WOW Women on Writing blog book tour for this book. Like I have said every other time, you know, when this hits, and it'll hit today, March 28th. So I'm a little late getting it up and everything, but I have to say it is a real page turner. It's the form of fiction. This is the first printing for it. The publisher is Black Rose Publishing. It's what they call a dual timeline. So a dual timeline is where you get a lot of flashbacks, and what I like with Miss Rosen's work is that the transition is very smooth. You don't feel like you're jumping around all over the place. You don't feel, you don't feel confused. It's not a choppy storyline like what usually happens if the person doesn't do it smooth. Usually there's a rough transition, and you kind of have to go back and forth, and you're like, okay, this is just too much and it's overkill. But that's not what happens in this book. She does a beautiful job with the transition. You are going back and forth, but you're going back and forth in a very smooth manner that really helps, and it's consistent with the main storyline. Which is about a woman who is going through her mother's things, and her mother is, very, very sick. She's, basically on the verge of dying, and her, like most grown children who have a mother that's, dying, she's concerned about getting her effects in order and, trying to do everything she can to try to give mom a few more days. I'm not going to tell too much of the story. I like to give my reviews in such a way, and that I don't give away too much of the story. It's the central figure in the backstory. It starts in 1915, and it starts with a little 11-year-old girl named Lena, who is crushing on a 15-year-old named Jack. So her father, they were planning in the beginning. They're planning on celebrating Seder, which is a Jewish holiday, and it's a feast that marks the beginning of the Jewish Passover. So in the beginning, you have where the two sets of parents, there's two families here, and the one's last name is Ross and the other one's last name is Pearl, and their story becomes very important as the story goes on. You start to see what their place is now on the current storyline, which is the main character is named Carolyn, and she is, like I said, putting her mother's effects together, getting her jewelry together, and she comes across this brooch, and she's trying to figure out where this brooch came from, and she can't really seem to get a straight answer out of her mom as to where this brooch, they call it a brooch, and then they call it let me see here. They call it a cameo. Now, a cameo is what they call a brooch or a pin that you can pin with it. If you're wearing, they used to use them a lot back in the day, but if you have what they call a high top, like a blouse that has a high top to it, many times women would use that brooch and they would pin it into the center right by their neck. Now, a cameo usually has a female's profile on it and everything. They can be, if you're into 19th century wardrobes and dress, then you'll think it's very pretty. They are very pretty and everything. They're not necessarily my thing, but I've also seen chokers made out of cameos as well. But a brooch, of course, is a pin, but the cameo is has the figurine, and it's usually a female figurine, and it's usually a profile. So it's usually turned sideways, and like I said, they can be very pretty. They're not necessarily my thing as far as anything I would wear myself, because I don't like things too close to my neck. So she's trying to figure out where this piece of jewelry came from, and that's where the story gets very interesting, because she also sees this same piece of jewelry in a painting that her mother has possession of. And so now she gets really interested. She's getting really intrigued, because it's the exact same piece of jewelry. It's not like it's one that just is similar. It's the exact piece of jewelry. So now she's curious about, who the woman is in this painting that's wearing this piece of jewelry. So that's where it starts to, it starts to go from there, because the rest of the book is basically her journey trying to find out who this, first of all, who painted the painting, finding the person who painted the painting, and then finding out what they know about this piece of jewelry and what's going on with it. Now, the one thing I like about this book, and a lot of authors are doing this, and I really like that they're doing it, for people who like to read their books for book clubs, she has discussion points. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of give a part of my review out of the discussion points. So one of the things that I talk about, she asks about when we first see Carolyn, what we think about her as she's going through, how do you initially characterize her when you see her going through her mother's things? So my response was, when I first see Carolyn, I see a woman who is very sentimental. When she makes a point, she makes a statement while she's going through her mother's things, about how her mother's jewelry is not just things to get rid of, but it's an entire life, a life that her parents built together over 50 years, building a life together. And I think that's what people don't understand. When people get mad, people talk about, oh, it's just material things, it's just material nonsense. It's not just material nonsense. It's your memories. It's your pictures. When you have stuff get destroyed in a natural disaster or fire or whatever, it's not the things, it's what they symbolize. I can remember a while back in the 90s, you had this thing where kids were getting killed over tennis shoes. And people were, oh, it's just tennis shoes. I'm like, you don't understand, what that symbolizes to that kid. It's not the things, it's what they symbolize. And I don't think that's what people understand. It's what it symbolizes. It symbolizes your hard work, to go out here and get these things. It symbolizes maybe a celebration. The brooch may have been an heirloom, a family heirloom that someone gave to someone. Many times jewelry, we use jewelry to express love. That's what an engagement ring is. It's symbolic of someone who wants to share their life with someone. It's intended. It's not, like I said, it's not the jewelry in and of itself. It is the thought behind it. And many people, I'm a person, I like jewelry. And so if you have a woman that likes jewelry, and we're not talking about in a gold digger kind of way, but maybe that's the way that man expresses his love, by buying her favorite pieces of jewelry to celebrate anniversaries, to celebrate milestones in the relationship. It can also be a way of celebrating. Let's say he bought her a certain type of ring when they first got together, but say now he's doing better financially. And so he decides to upgrade her ring. And a lot of people do that. So another question is, what does the title Disharmony of Silence give you a hint as to what the novel is about? And does the ending relate to it? So my answer, I said the title Disharmony of Silence makes me think of two sayings that I've heard of over my lifetime. One is, you're as sick as your secrets. The other is, it all comes out in the wash. There's really no such thing as a secret that goes with you to the grave. And I have "to the grave" in quotes. And I say that because it all comes out. The truth comes out, even if your descendants are the ones to find it. And that's pretty much what happens here. The descendants wind up finding it. So, that's why I tell people, I don't care how hard it is. Sometimes you have to be honest. Honesty is really sometimes you have to go ahead and disclose. And I don't mean it in a busybody gossip kind of way, but I mean it as far as, it's going to come out sooner or later anyway. It just is. Certain things are going to come out. It's hard to hide certain things. So to me, the ending relates to the title because it wasn't just, what you have in here is two grandmothers, and one grandmother named Rebecca, her lies led to disharmony. And you will find that out as you get into the book, because she tells some, the first portion you hear some of them not being honest with themselves about why they're not coming to dinner. They picked a fight and said, well, it was because the one's husband cheated in cards. But really, to be honest with you, they had a falling out over a situation already. And so the cards was the thing that they decided to go, okay, this is the last straw. How many of you have had somebody be mad at you over something, and rather than address the thing they're mad about, they decide to pick a fight with you over something that really isn't all that. So, it's some very minor thing. I've seen couples get mad at each other over what movie to go to. Usually if you're getting mad over something really, really small, that's usually a sign of something even bigger that you're dissatisfied with in the relationship. And so the other grandmother, whose name is Ida, there seems to be the one grandmother seems to like to lie, and then the other grandmother seems to like to keep quiet because she doesn't want to make a fuss. And in her keeping quiet, she not only didn't stand up to the other grandmother, but she also, for the sake of peace, doesn't speak up when she sees how her husband handles the situation, and rather than tell him, I don't think that's the way you should handle that, she keeps quiet. So, the person doing the lying is bad, but the people who keep the conspiracy of silence is even worse. And so as you get into it, you start to see how the conspiracy of silence lasts well into some very important developments within this story that really, really break up the family. And so I was gonna, go even deeper into my answer, but I realized, okay, that's a bit of a spoiler, so I'm not gonna go into that. I also felt. So one of the another question is. Very early in the novel, the topic of family arises with the hint of a secret. So Ida, one of the characters, seems to be holding back information from her 11-year-old daughter, Lena, as to why the Ross aren't coming to Cedar. And like I said, Cedar is a Jewish, the beginning, kind of the jump off to Passover. And do you think it was important information that would weave through the story as it progressed? One thing I like about a good secret at the beginning of a book or a movie is that it kind of keeps you engaged, which is, it's a plot device. So I definitely felt like, whatever she was holding on to was going to be answered later on in the book. We sooner or later, I said I definitely felt like what the information that she was holding back would weave through the story as it progressed. I also feel like I said before, that's good storytelling because it keeps the reader engaged, because now you're going to stay there and continue to read because you want to know what this secret is. You want to know, well, why aren't they coming? And sooner or later, the mother explains to her daughter why. But then I'm like, okay, now I'm engaged because I know there's more to this story between these two families of what's going on. Eventually, the families do wind up being related to each other and become one family. And, that's because of a marriage that happens. And, you think, well, they're marrying, and that means they're going to procreate. That means they're going to get along even better. That's not always, that doesn't always work out the way you think it is. Sometimes stuff like that can heal things a little, but it can also go back the other way, where whatever was a problem before anyone got married becomes an even bigger problem, because now all of your major trust issues begin to manifest. And so I also complimented, like I said earlier, the dual timeline, because it gave the story depth. I like a good backstory. I really do. And I have gone to a movie before because I thought, okay, they just mentioned somebody in the backstory. Now I got to see this because I got to see how it's relating to the rest of the story. It also gives you a bit of a why behind the what. I like things that kind of give things background and give things depth and make characters. I don't like one-dimensional characters. I like my characters kind of 3D. I like to have a backstory. I like to have background. Me being a psych major, I tend to like to be able to get inside my characters' heads and figure out why they do what they do and why they're behaving like they're behaving. Okay, let me see here. I think the one character had, there's a question about the character, why, everyone seemed to kind of tap dance around the one grandmother, the one named Rebecca. I think if you ever observed group dynamics, and especially family dynamics, some behavior is so ingrained that people on an unconscious level don't even realize that they're doing it. They've gotten so used to navigating, especially very overbearing, very tyrannical kind of parents or grandparents, and those can be male or female. So every so often you see where you see a family navigating around a particular person, and it's because they've gotten so used to that person's behavior that they are that they are so used to doing it that they don't even realize that that's what they're doing. So I'll say this much. I highly recommend this book. This book is really good. I mean, it's a real page turner, even though I kind of procrastinated a little bit and, wound up getting into it last minute. But I was able to cover a lot of territory in a little bit of time, and it really kept me engaged. You really want to know. One thing I like about, and like I said, it's a mystery, but it's not a scary mystery. It's not gothic. It's not, a horror mystery. It is basically, but you do want to know more. You get the instinct as you get further, because there's a couple different dynamics going on, and there's a couple of different major plot twists that happen, and all of them involve people holding on to secrets and telling lies and not being honest with each other or themselves. So I highly recommend this book. I even recommend this book for book clubs, that you read it and discuss, if you are a person that's listening to me and you do book clubs, I highly recommend that you try this book for your book club and participate fully. Go ahead and read. Go ahead and fill out the discussion points and bring them to your book club meeting and discuss them with each other. Now, I know we are right in the middle of this coronavirus thing, so even if you have to live stream each other or FaceTime each other through your phones, which I think would be interesting, just to discuss it, I would recommend it. Or I know some of us have Facebook groups that we discuss different books that we're reading through them. I really recommend this book as you read, because it is a really good read. It's an excellent read, and I compliment. She does a very good job. The dual timeline is a very smooth transition. It's not blotchy. You're not sitting there thinking, what in the heck is going on next, in a bad way. So I really recommend, getting it. Enjoy, like I said before, try to make the best of your shut-in time during this during our stay in. Wash your hands, take care of yourself, follow the directions of your local and state governing authorities as far as congregating in groups. Try to keep it below 10. If you do a book group, if you're doing a book group, try to keep that below 10. Try not to travel any more than is necessary, so that we can kind of get this thing under control. You guys have a good one. Enjoy your weekend. I love you, and you be blessed. Bye-bye. Hello, you have reached the message line for Adam's Rib Media Ministry. If you would like to give me a shout out, recommend some topics for discussion, or give an opinion about some topics that I've already discussed, either here on my podcast or on my blogs, leave me a message and I will get right back to you. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.